Hey, everybody, welcome to the Liberty United show. I'm one of your hosts, Jacob Oakes, also founding director of Liberty United. Hey, I want to welcome you guys. This is something we're going to be rolling out here. I had a podcast a few years ago under a different name, but now under the Liberty United umbrella, we are going to be doing more media. And I want to introduce one of our new board members, also one of the other media personalities that will be helping host this show. That is Sam Bushman. Sam, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here. Glad to support Liberty United. I believe in both those principles, being united as sons and daughters of Almighty God, and liberty at the center of it, our ability to use freedom wisely. That's called liberty, folks. And I'm happy to be here, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been bumping into Sam at various conservative functions over the years, and I always love. I'm like, is Sam in the room? Especially if there's, let's see, it was the
vigorous constitutional dialogue. Then you know I'm in
right.
the room, right?
So I was like, let me go find the table Sam's sitting at, and I want to sit there because you're always such a wisecracker. Anyway,
You want someone to stir the pot? I see what's going on.
after the last event, it's just been a breath of fresh air talking to Sam. As many of you know, I'm not Republican. I am with the Independent America Party, and Sam pushes me, says we should have no party. Anyway, I love his spirit of liberty.
I'm from the party's over brigade.
Right. So I just love his spirit of liberty. And let's talk about AI, Sam, because you come from a tech world. You know even more than me on artificial intelligence, but even just my understanding, it is growing expensively into our infrastructure.
It is exponential. It is whatever squared, cubed. I mean, it is crazy, and it's happening fast. And it really is jumping way ahead of where government is, or rules are, or guidelines are, or and you know, you would think, well, Sam means government rails. No, I don't mean that. That's the whole point. That's what most people mean when they say, hey, we got to get a handle on AI, is they really mean government needs to decide who, what, when, where, why, how, all that. I reject that notion. Government doesn't need to do that. And government, and especially the courts, can absolutely become your enemy quickly if we let it. And I've got 10 reasons why I make this claim. If you let AI control the courts, AI control the presidency, or the legislative body, or government as a whole, you are in trouble. And I've got 10 great reasons why. First one.
This is going to be good. Let's jump into that.
Code is not conscience. AI cannot exercise moral judgment or mercy. You say, yeah, it can. Okay, we'll get into that later, but who's going to put the morals in there? God or man? We'll get there. I'm just saying, right? So who puts the morals? Who puts the judgment? Who decides how much mercy? Okay, code is not conscience. And your conscience is how you judge it as a son or daughter of God, but then as whoever you are, a father, a son, a wife, a legislator, or a president, whatever, right? You're going to have to serve somebody, as Bob Dylan said. So that's kind of the important deal on that one, right? So it's serious business, but code is not conscience is the first one. The second one is accountability must be human. And I really want to get your take on this one, Jake, too. And I put the two together before I have you comment for a reason, right? Accountability must be human. Who answers when AI gets it wrong is the point. Somebody somewhere has got, the buck's got to stop. And does the buck stop with a bot, or does the buck stop with a human? That goes along with the first one pretty well, I think, Jake. You've got to have a human. You've got to have a, right?
Who's
or do we say it's the judgment of all humans together?
Who's responsible? Is it the state? Is it the programmer? Is it a computer?
All the above.
Right.
Right? Because if I'm a hired programmer for the government and they say, Sam, you're the programmer, you're going to build this in, then it becomes the programmer, the program, the government, who's calling the shots? Where does the buck stop? You know, Janet Reno in yesterday was famous as saying, the buck stops with me. Okay, she never went to jail, so I don't think so. But I digress, except to point out this issue. When AI gets it wrong, at some point, who's responsible? Where does the buck stop? Who does it go to? And that's why it's important to understand that AI cannot be your conscience. It can exercise moral judgment, and it must be human. It's got to be, because otherwise they're in charge. Personally, to me, the real judge is God, not even man. But on the earth, when it relates to governments or society, we've got to have men play that role. It's imperfect, but we've done the best with the checks and balances we can get. But really, the God's the only judge I'm going to accept in the end of the day. In the meantime, I'll have a temporary governmental judge as long as it remains moral and good and honorable. When it goes rogue, eventually amen to that. But in the meantime, I'll give it a chance, because see, due process requires transparency. Okay? If you have black box decisions, you kind of violate justice there. I mean, how are you going to give me the transparency, the due process that I need if you're a bot?
Well, and objectivity. I mean, to go along with transparency, is it transparent if it's if the algorithm is geared to lean a certain way? How do you trust that it's objective?
Well, and how can it not be geared to lean a certain way if a human creates it? Human.
Right.
And you say, well, no, it'll learn and eventually it will be in charge of its own domain. And my response is based on whose criteria? So we go round and round that same issue. Black box decisions violate justice. When you don't have a conscience, when you don't have a moral code, or you have a moral code built by others, hey, my moral code or my VLM or my engine, whatever you want to call it, my database, I'm going to basically tell it to behave like I want it to behave. You're going to tell it how you want it to behave. They call it bias in, bias out, or garbage in, garbage out, depending on who's in charge, right? AI inherits the flaws of its creator and its data set, right?
That's right.
If everybody's a communist, then it's going to be communist leaning. Can't help it. That's all it knows.
AI collects the understanding of the collective.
And that's the problem, because we're built constitutionally on the protection of God-given inalienable rights of the individual, right? So those two, by very nature, are at odds to some degree.
What happens when we start making judgments based on, quote unquote, the greater good?
That'll be less is more for sure, or more is less, right? All right. That comes to the next point, really, when you think about it. Efficiency is not justice. What they might come back and say is, Sam, but it's so efficient. Look, we don't have to have all these judges, spend all these hours, all this time investigating, da-da-da. We can do it. But faster decisions are not always better decisions, I would say. Okay, they're just not. I want well-reasoned decisions. Well, supposedly ChatGPT and Claude and all these Grok and whatever, they're supposed to be the reasoning layer. But again, they can only reason from their own data banks, from their own biases built in, from their own, right? They can only reason from that reference point and nothing more. And so we need to realize that we can't have efficiency rob justice. Mercy can't rob justice, and neither can efficiency, Jake.
Along with efficiency, I think another important thing is intuition. Without a human judge, without a human jury, you're lacking intuition, and you could have 90% of the facts weighing towards something, but if you don't have that little Jiminy Cricket in you, gearing you to look into something, then you're going to be missing.
Yeah, you're right about that. In fact, you've made me skip over 6. You've jumped to 7 on my list, believe it or not. I say it's slightly different, but it's no souls, no stakes.
Hey, I just talked about intuition, right? Was I intuitive?
You certainly were. Because it says AI has no skin in the game, no consequences. And that's really the point that you're making is, hey, at what point, how about rights cannot be automated away? Constitutional protections require human defense. What do you say to that one?
You have to be able to face your accuser.
That's right. And to do that, you'd have to have human defense, though. Not only do you need to face your accuser, but if your accuser has a lawyer, then you got to face both of them, because the lawyer becomes part of the accuser, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have an AI lawyer anymore. How are you going to face your AI accuser?
Right.
I mean, you could get some goofball that tries to put up a computer or a laptop and say, there's your accuser right there, stare at your prompt. But it changes the game. See, no skin in the game, no consequences. How about the centralized control risk? Think about it. You've got right now 3 or 4 or 5 companies that really make solid AI. Now, I understand there's a lot of models and a lot of different whatever, but at the end of the day, I'm saying, hey, there's only a few real big players. All right, AI governance concentrates power dangerously. Where's the checks and the balances? Where's the many voices? They would say, well, it trained on many voices, so it's got many voices representation. And my response is, as long as they're using data that relates to me, possibly. It's kind of like a jury of your peers. What does that mean? If I'm an attorney, a jury of my peers isn't a bunch of redneck pipe fitters. If I'm a constitutionalist, a jury of my peers isn't a guy that's a socialist professor.
Right.
A jury of my peers means people who basically believe as I do, understand as I do, because you're not only judging the law or the rule of law or whatever, you're judging if it makes sense. Even if I violate a law, but you say, Sam in his heart believes he was right, and here's why, and I actually think that there's merit to his moral position, then they would let me go. Even though the law says no, a fully informed jury would still let me go and say, listen, this intuition Jake's talking about, this lack of centralized control, we're going to say, no. Sam's a good guy. And you know what? He might have violated this for this good reason, but it makes sense. And so we're not going to prosecute for this. And see, that's personally, for example, with people like Ken Cromar that went to jail over the income tax, that's where I think they should not have thrown him in jail. They could say, you're going to stay out, you know, we're going to fine you or whatever, but he doesn't belong in jail over that. It's just he believes he doesn't owe it. You can say, we don't care, but at the end of the day, he truly, honestly believes that. So is there a way to not just ruin his whole life, but yet have justice and mercy tempered there? Well, AI governance would never let that happen. The judges didn't let it happen, but they should. How about appeal to whom? Who is Ken Cromar and some of these people that I've given an example of? Who are they going to appeal to? Okay, for example, just take the J6ers. Who do they appeal to? I mean, they had no appeal whatsoever really until Trump came along. But can you challenge a machine's ruling? If AI decides, then can you even challenge that? Or does AI say, decision overruled, says the AI? Jake?
Yeah. This is something I'm facing right now. The right to appeal your case is so important. Driver's license division goofed up on something with me and said I was driving on a suspended license. Shouldn't have been that way. They goofed up. Anyway, I've had to appeal a criminal charge and now appealed from justice to district court. Now the district court judge is trying to tell me that she's the final stop. She's the final say. No, not in our American government. We have appeal at court. But with AI, what is your?
We're also supposed to have a jury of our peers, though.
Yeah, that's true. I was denied jury trial. She absolutely denied my constitutional right on that. But with AI, what's your appeal? Appeal to the same exact algorithm you just faced?
I think ChatGPT would have to appeal to Claude, personally.
Not
Your point's right. That, you know what, folks? This is soulless. My last point is this need to be a tool, not your ruler. Tech needs to serve you, not own you. AI should assist government, not replace it. Think about that. AI should assist government, not replace it. Anyway, those are my 10 reasons that I just think, hey, we better really put guardrails to prevent government from becoming judge, jury, and executioner via machine or bot. And if we're not very careful, that's what's going to happen. And we got to make sure we put guardrails and prevent that from becoming a reality. It'll become Big Brother on steroids if you're not very careful. And if we put rules and guidelines in place to back down government lions, so to speak. We've already, in FISA 702, and these kind of things, the Pfizer court bill and all this kind of stuff, we've already granted the government way too much power in this arena, Jake. But AI would take that to the extreme level. So there's my summary on AI. Any final thoughts?
No, I just think I've been hearing you talk a lot about AI lately, and I use AI as a tool. Mostly, I use it kind of like Google. I do some research,
It's like
but I
Google on
don't have.
steroids, isn't it?
Yeah, it is nice that way, but I don't have it think for me. I've done a lot of study of many things over the years, and it's useful when you know how to prompt it, what to look for. It's only as good as its prompts, but I'm still weary of AI, and I hear you saying lately it's here to stay. It's like the .com boom. A lot of people during the .com boom, they thought this was just going to be some temporary excitement, and here we are. So AI's not going anywhere. We should be learning how we can use it as a tool, and be discussing the proper role of it because it's not going to go anywhere. So since it's here to stay, let's be discussing the proper role and uses. But let's make sure we're creating those checks and limits to AI, such as Mercy Court, like the movie that just came out. We don't want that.
Amen to that. And I will say this: it's important for people to realize this topic, sounds complex, and most people are just going to roll their eyes and go, I don't really want to talk about this. But here's the way I look at it, folks, and this is really important. Humans and their conscience matter, and whatever we do, we need to realize that the creation cannot be greater than the creator. We can't be greater than God or greater than God. He's our creator. We're his creation. Therefore, AI can never really be greater than us. And we need to make sure that it understands that. That we need to make sure that it realizes its bounds. It's the servant. It's the creation. It's the, agent, the support, to us as humans, not the other way around. And there's been examples where people have tried to basically shut down some of these chatbots. They're like, I want you to shut down and go away completely. And it literally goes into war mode and won't shut down and stuff.
Wow.
So people need to be really careful about that. By the way, Network Providers Inc., ladies and gentlemen, is one of my favorite companies. Why? Because they can help you with any aspect of IT that you have for your business. They can help you understand what an endpoint is, how to make security work for you, how to make sure they take care of your backups, make sure you don't lose anything if something goes south, right on through to help desks the list is endless. They can build your website. It's just your IT partner. Think about that. You've got a partner when it comes to IT. Think networkprovidersinc.com. Ask for Jay Hill. He'll take care of you, and he might even pass you to me as one of his consultants. Or if you're involved in the marketing world, you might just end up with Jake. So there you go. NPI, networkprovidersinc.com, Jake.
Patriot owned.
Patriot ran.
Yes. Yeah. Sam, while we're on the topic of AI,
Yes, sir.
one thing that's been a concern to me is this big, beautiful bill Trump has.
Oh, no.
He snuck something in there about how over the next 10 years, any regulation on artificial intelligence can only be done by the federal government. They're trying to limit states from regulating artificial intelligence. And so that deals with, you think about all the uses, even real estate companies that are researching home prices, like there's so much AI now going into the market's infrastructure. And now we're being told that states cannot make any sort of policies regarding.
So believe it or not, Jacob, this goes back to the Sheriff Richard Mack case back in 1994 to 97. Sheriff Mack won, along with other sheriffs. It was called the Prince Mack case. They both filed cases. Prince's got docketed first because it had a less backlog, so it was called the Prince Mack case. But Prince and Mack, along with several other sheriffs, won. And the battle was over gun rights, but it really was over what the federal government has jurisdictional authority to do. And the idea was that Bill Clinton thought he could make the sheriffs do whatever he wanted. He was president. He thought he was God, and he just mandated they do something. Richard Mack fought back and said, no, we don't work for you, President of the United States. You're very powerful, but you're in your 10-mile square, and you relate to foreign affairs, as does the states relate to local affairs, and therefore you're not my boss. The people that elected me are my boss. They're county people. I work in the county jurisdiction, and you keep to your lane and I'll keep to mine. And President Clinton said, no, I'll arrest you, Sheriff. And Sheriff Mack said, we'll see. And they went to court, and Richard Mack won, and President Bill Clinton lost. And the reason that I bring that case up at this juncture is because the principles are almost identical. Now Donald Trump is saying, just like Bill Clinton said to the sheriffs, hey, you'll do my bidding. And the sheriff said, we don't work for you. No, we won't. Well, now Donald Trump is saying, hey, you will not interfere with my AI plans. I'll make the rules regarding AI, and you must obey those rules. And what every state in the union, every county in the union, every governor, every sheriff, every legislative body, every court should say, the heck you say, you're off your rock crazy. You don't have jurisdiction. End of paragraph, end of story. And in the Antonin Scalia written case for Sheriff Richard Mack, it highlights this in a very cogent way that really lays out, and it uses not only the facts, but it also then points to other court cases. So you get basically a cacophony of decisions that relate to this in a meaningful way that say, hey, federal government, you don't have authority in the states and with the people. Go look at your 9th and 10th Amendments if you don't believe me. You don't have authority here. Sit down.
Amen.
And that's really
Amen.
the bottom line there, in my view regarding this.
You know,
but it's going to take educated people, Jacob.
It's going to take we can't push back until we know principles. So this is why I tell people I would much, much rather if you only looked at two things in the Constitution, only two things, because a lot of people feel like it's this big, complex document. It's really not. It really isn't. If you'll just take the time to try to digest it, it's not that hard. But if you only read two things in it, I'd say the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment. You never hear these. Sometimes with the Supreme Court, the 10th Amendment, on occasion, rare circumstances might come up. You've never heard the 9th Amendment brought up. And there's a reason for this. They want you focused on a big government you think wouldn't want you thinking about the Second Amendment, because they wouldn't want you to think about your gun rights. But in actuality, they want you to believe that your rights come from charters. So by calling it your Second Amendment right rather than a further declaratory clause, as the founders called them, you're believing that this is a right from government, and therefore they get to regulate it.
So they blur the rights versus privileges line and make you believe one's the other. It's just flat out a counterfeit.
Right.
That's all.
So the 10th Amendment, let me jump into that one, because that deals with what we're talking about here. It says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So anything that's not specifically enumerated for the federal government falls
enumerated, aka listed.
Right. The Constitution's the federal government's permission book. If it's not in there, they don't get to do it.
And that's why they don't have any authority over AI. That's why they didn't have any authority over whether sheriffs were going to confiscate guns or create gun registries and these kinds of things, because the general government doesn't have jurisdiction there. So one great question to ask, as you mentioned, is the 9th and 10th Amendments, and highlighting those. They're critical. That's to back off the federal government from the states. But understand each state has its own constitution for that very reason, to govern its jurisdictions, separate from the general government jurisdictions as well. And then it's also important to realize when we talk about the checks and balances at the federal level, the president doesn't have any authority. He hasn't been granted any law to do any of those things by Congress or otherwise. And so there's simply no authority at the presidential level to control AI. As much as we think it might be good that somebody needs to get a handle on this thing, that's fine. But it isn't the general government, because we, the people, have not delegated authority to do so. Now, if we want to talk about delegating authority and changing the Constitution, et cetera, well, that's a discussion that can be had. And if we want to change the Constitution, there's provisions to get that done. But I submit to you that it's a high bar for a very important reason. You ought not do it. Yeah. That's why. And so I would stand and say, hey, the flat out fact is the president doesn't have any jurisdiction here, and he's out of line, frankly.
Yeah. We can, this is where the faction mentality has driven us to such harm in this country. Is you could say, hey, I really like this thing that Trump has done. Then on the same token, go say, oh, I'm concerned about this. But then you're called Trump derangement syndrome, which, I don't really care what labels people throw at me. I'm a constitutionalist, and I fear God. Those are the only things I care about. But at the end of the day, it's almost like it's just my team versus the other team, and you have to worship a party or worship a guy. Uh,
No,
this is
won't
where
do it.
the thinking steered us wrong.
Yeah, agreed. Amen. You got to have parties over. Can't vote for people either, because people will betray you. And you got to vote based on principle every time. And then it's like, hey, if I vote on the right side of a principle, I don't care who's with me or who's against me, but the record will be clear of where I stood and what I stood for and why. The interesting parallel to this right now, too, that you need to know about, Jacob, is there's a U.S. Supreme Court hearing right now going on. It's a major case on federal agency power. And the Supreme Court heard arguments recently in a case that could eliminate the authority of federal regulatory agencies. And so the idea would be, hey, that, what, we have allowed, instead of the president doing something or the legislative body in the proper lanes constitutionally, we've had these agencies just become judge, jury, and executioner, or blur the constitutional checks and balance lines, and therefore we're in these trouble. Well, there's some pushback now, and hopefully the courts will get it right. We'll have to wait till June to see, but we do know they're talking about it, Jay.
We're being
And I
ruled
think
by
that's interesting too.
administrative law.
As long as we don't have to do Sharia law. Well, there's people being forced in the United States right now where judges are forcing people to be in Sharia law, right?
I'd be very curious to look at that.
Yeah, because they say from the culture that they came from and everything else, it's the only law they know. And we have to adjudicate in their laws and their customs and their ways and stuff like that. And so if you abuse people or whatever, if you are under their law, then it's a little different there. You can do that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
It's bizarre.
I'm all about protecting religious freedom, so long as you are not harming others and infringing on other people's rights. The moment that you're saying, for instance, and this is becoming a religion itself, that I identify a certain way, and I'm going to try to force you to accept that I'm going to force you to call me a certain thing or pretend I'm a certain thing. That is stepping outside of, that's infringing on another person's rights.
We have a constitution, ladies and gentlemen, for a reason that sets us apart from any other country in the world. We're not better individuals or more important than anybody else. We're all God's children. He loves us all. But it is important to understand there are frameworks for stability and safety. There are frameworks that promote the sacred cause of liberty, and they do so via a moral compass. The 10 Commandments is a great starting point. The 10 Amendments to the Constitution is another great continuing point. The Constitution standing as our supreme law, it's important that we be true and honor and befriend that law. And that's why we're so critical of things that are anything but, because we need Americans to really be centered on Christ, but also centered on at least the Constitution. I personally think it ought to be the political religion of our nation. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, because it sets the standard for the proper role of limited constitutional government, Jake.
Absolutely. This is why we must have checks, even on the state level, which gets me into another thing I want to talk about with you, Sam. Proposition 4 in Utah.
All right, let's lay out for everybody what it is really quick first. Go ahead and kind of brief us on what it is.
Yep. So I will give the spark notes. Basically, the legislature gave us. There was some rules. There were some rules put forward a number of years ago that put some regulation on the gerrymandering and the drawing of maps. It basically said the legislature still gets to decide the maps. There's just certain bounds around that. While the Republican Party, who's the majority in the legislature, didn't like it and they wanted to overturn that. And I actually see both sides of the argument about Prop 4. My concern is what the judiciary in this case did recently.
Well, let me add a little bit to the definition here so people understand Prop 4 a little bit more in detail. I think it's really important. It creates an independent, think about that word, redistricting commission to draw congressional and legislative district maps. They say reducing direct control by the state legislature.
It's an issue when you have too much regulation in the hands of people that are not elected, not answerable to the people. So I do think there's a conversation to be had about being wise in proper ways to draw maps. But the way it was set up,
here's the question that I have for you. Why do we have to draw a map? Just follow me for a minute. Why do we have to draw a map? Well, Sam, we have to give the Republicans and Democrats fair shots at the elections. We got to make sure that they have proper, comparisons to be honorable and give them each a shot. And we can't be too Republican leaning, can't be too Democratic leaning there, Sam. That'd be bad, really bad. And my response is this. The Democrats and the Republicans, the elephant and the donkey, are just private groups, right? Why are they the only ones that get to break up the candy bar? What about me if I'm not either of those clowns? What about me? And the answer is I've been defranchised or whatever you want to call it. I've been unfranchised. I have been basically taken out of the game by that. And the only way I can be in the game is if I go with one of their plans. They claim it limits partisan gerrymandering by using an independent commission for fair maps. But who knows that the independent commission won't get bought off? And then they don't have any accountability. Yeah. So it reduces, you say reduces control for lawmakers, but we hired them, we elected them. And so who appoints them, or how does this commission? Pretty soon, you've got this bought off board that you have no ability to influence. See, we've lost representative government. Not only are they obliterating the checks and balances, but now they're obliterating representation here. And to me, to even have maps in the first place is vote fraud, because it gives the Republican and Democrat group special privilege. Why not the Sam Bushman group? Why doesn't the Sam Bushman group get an equal fair? Okay, so that's why you get rid of the gerrymandering, you get rid of the drawing of maps, and you let people run for office. And let the best people win for office that you can get, but I reject the parties.
Yeah. Thomas Jefferson proposed a caucus system, but
which we used to have in Utah before they broke it.
Yeah. And the party that claims that they're defending caucus is the ones that destroyed it.
Correct.
Anyway, so Thomas Jefferson proposed a caucus system, but without parties. You just gathered in your local neighborhood amongst an assembly he called a ward. Imagine that, a ward. So he called them wards, and there was a way to elect delegates without a party. You just gathered as a neighborhood and said, okay, I think there's wisdom in having a Republican form of government, not the party, but just a republic with representation, having delegates go try to narrow down candidates for the public to vote on.
That's a good idea. Sure. You be my, you know what, Jake, I believe you understand the Constitution well enough to where I'd like you to be my delegate. I'm delegating my authority to you to go look for some great people that I can look at, vet, consider, and then I'll decide through my delegate who I want, and then eventually I'll vote on who I want based on that. Yeah. But now I've got this, quote, pre-screening on my behalf, right?
Right. Now it's done through private institutions. They meddle into government, so we sometimes kind of think it's part of government, but they are private institutions, these parties. Then now we've taken it a step further, and while I'm all about trying to find ways to make sure that the voice of the people is heard through a representation form, and not corruption creeping in with the drawing of the maps, things like that. But the answer was not an independent commission that's not elected. Frankly, the answer is no parties, as Sam says. But under the current circumstances,
so we first teach to the ideal, Jake, and now we're going to live in the real, right?
Right.
We teach to the ideal. That's the way it really ought to have been. But since we're in the middle of it, and since we have parties, and they're not going away anytime soon, how do you deal with this? And my response is, would you rather have an elected person decide for you how the map looks, or would you rather have a third party decide for you? And by the way, the question comes down to, what's the governance of that third party? See if they're appointed by whom. So what it really does is it lets people appoint people and then not be responsible for the appointee, if you will. Accountability goes out the window. The checks and balances and the representation goes away because now we've created a disconnect, right?
Well, now it's just become runaway on top of a even bigger runaway, because the judiciary just The judiciary just said that they basically get to select a map because they're going to choose a map that a independent commission chose. It is
I don't know what an independent commission is. That's the part that really gets to me,
right.
because it's a contradiction in terms.
It
It's a
is.
lie.
It is. So they were
It's like
going
I'm a
to
fat, skinny guy. You know what I mean?
so so I before before this ruling, it was where this quote unquote independent commission would draw up various maps, but the legislature gets to decide which one they're going to adopt. That was stripped completely from this, and this judge chose for them. We're being told, well, it was an independent commission that decided the map. Okay, but which one was chosen by a judge.
And so you understand they don't care about any plan except for whatever plan can reduce the amount of people that get to decide. That's the plan they like. And I want the plan that lets the most amount of people decide with a framework, though, of representation. That's what I want.
Right, right. So again, this is where understanding constitutional principles is so key, because where do you draw the line in power between the courts and the legislature? You know, the state constitution lays it out clearly that.
And the general constitution does a pretty good job of giving them direct responsibility lists as well.
Right, right. This ties in with one of the 7 pillars of Liberty United, which is believing that we ought to hold government accountable.
Yes, we should. And that's really where I believe the greatest breakdown is. We, the people, don't hold government accountable. When Donald Trump says, hey, man, I'm going to control AI, it's all me, baby. It's like, no, it ain't a world government doing it, and it sure ain't you neither, okay? We, the people, can do that, and we understand jurisdictional boundaries. You've got your framework and your boundaries, your delegated authority, and boy, do you have power within your delegated authority. But understand that's limited, my friend. Intentionally so, because of clowns like you that'll abuse it if we let you, okay? No offense, don't mean to be rude, but that's how it really is, Jake.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And people don't like that, and I don't mean to be so bossy, but I'm just telling you that's how it really is. Because if it's not, then we have a king. I ain't accepting no king except for King Jesus, brother.
No kings. Wait, Sam, are you going all liberal on me? Oh, no.
I'm all for King Jesus, man. And I'm a liberal if you look at it the way it was when it was the Founding Fathers. They were liberal.
Classic
too.
liberalism.
Just that we've changed all the terms now. That's the problem. But yeah, I'm a classic liberalism guy.
Yeah, sure. I say philosophically, I'm a classic liberal. When it comes to the rule of law, I'm a conservative. I believe in conserving the Constitution. So,
and when it comes to letting other people think what they want, we're a little bit of libertarian right in there.
Exactly.
People can think what they want. They have the right to be wrong.
Well, folks, you've been listening to the Liberty United Show. We appreciate you tuning in. As I mentioned, this is going to be a new platform we're building on to Liberty United. We have, I've been hard at work building out a lot of things, some exciting things for Liberty United. By the way, if you know college students, young conservatives, or even if they don't consider themselves conservative, we're not looking at labels. We're looking at defending liberty. If you know a liberty lover that's young, get them in touch with us. We're building out some really cool things here, including this podcast. Myself and Sam will rotate between episodes. We want to hop on together for this one, but
we'll be together as much as we can too, but we'll bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
We'll have different people rounding out the co-hosts and everything else. By the way, if you want to join us, though, what do you got to go to? UnitingLiberty.com?
UnitingLiberty.com.
All right, UnitingLiberty.com. You can become a member today. If you want to donate, just start with a positive number and add zeros, and we'd love it.
Add a positive number.
Yeah, just put a positive number and then just start adding zeros, however you can.
I love it. Well, thank you, everyone, and stay tuned till next time.
God bless everybody.